Good afternoon, dear viewers. Today, we continue the theme of people of the future. In order to expand this topic to an incredible size, as the hero of the Master and Margarita said, but God knows what. He spoke differently, of course, of sizes. We have invited two more guests to our company. Here is Alexander Ku. Here in this case, he is in the upper left corner, and Vladimir Grigoryevich Budanov, who for some reason has disappeared from the screen at the moment. Here, but we hope to see him soon now. But in fact, why did we do it? We did this in order to start a new topic, and now I will make a short presentation. And then we will give the floor to Alexander, our esoteric. So, we start with a small presentation, which is introductory. That means the theme is people of the future. The fifth theme is a mystical person. Well, you can also call him an esoteric person. The participants are all the same: Suhonos Sergei Ivanovich, scientist, entrepreneur; Kashansky Alexandrovich, philosopher, writer. The new participant is Budanov Vladimir Grigoryevich, physicist, philosopher. I won't introduce him, everyone knows him well. We have it on Wikipedia. Alexander Ku is an esoteric engineer, and Maria Sergeevna Shona, our regular participant in our conversations. So, what is it about? The fact is that one of my new ideas is that evolution goes in the form of a shuttle. That is, at some point evolution ends on a certain scale, and then it is simply unable to move, and then there is an overflow of the living form of matter into some, through some narrow neck of evolution, a bottleneck it is called, and then after the overflow, a new tree unfolds on a new floor. Here is a vivid example of such an overflow is the appearance of multicellular. For example, there were once such unicellular ones that existed all over the planet. There were no multicellular ones. Then the oldest flagellates appeared, which for some reason decided, I know why, I won't expand on this topic here. For some reason they decided to unite into some colonies. Then these colonies began to turn into multicellular, and as a result, we see the world of multicellular, including you and me. That is, from one single-celled species. And I must say there are millions of these species there. Our entire visible biological world has come from one species. Just imagine, here you see this little flagellum in the left corner. Because of this little flagellum, the whole biosphere happened. And now we see the same small flagellum in quotation marks, a little man who has reached a certain limit of development. And then a whole tree of cosmic beings should arise from this little man. Is that what kind of tree it is? What is it about? So we have considered at the previous 4 meetings, for topics more precisely, there were more meetings. We considered a person of the near future. We considered first the future of cyborg, transhumanistic man. Then we looked at a creative person. Then we looked at a collective creative person for a long time. That's the tree. Then we examined with you the official person who is being prepared, so to speak, for us by the same transhumanists. Here. But these are all people of the earthly essence. In fact, people who will live, well, if not quite on Earth, then somewhere maybe there in the depths of the ocean, or maybe in space. But people will certainly be different, but not so different. But almost everything that we considered, it was within the framework of such a scientific branch. Now I'm going to collapse it. You see, there is a branch going to the right, which considers the future of humanity from a scientific point of view. But the fact is that humanity is 80% religious. There are also people who consider themselves to be esoteric people, who communicate with the subtle world, represent the world in a completely different way than scientists. Well, as a matter of fact, religion also represents the world in a different way, and the future of a person in this world is also represented in a different way. For example, I can give such a vivid example when in the 90s I was invited to Dubna for a conference dedicated to communication and an attempt to find contacts between science and religion, the Christian religion. It was a grandiose event, which was started by physicists from Dubna. I can say that not only our leading priests and scientists came to this event, so to speak. Representatives of the church abroad came to this event, and there were such bright personalities as Osipov. Everyone knows this man well, who is an ideologist in many respects of Christianity. And Kirov recently excommunicated articles from the church, protodeacon. But he was in favor then. Then he performed very brightly, flashed everywhere on the TV screen. And for 3 days, scientists together with priests in one hall, there were about 50 people there, probably trying to find some kind of common vision of the world. I have to say that the attempt was unsuccessful. Why? Because at the end of this third day, unable to withstand this, so to speak, tension, Kirov jumped up and expressed, from my point of view, the general opinion of all the priests who gathered there. He accused the whole of science of using crutches in their lives, that they use methods that are completely unnecessary from their point of view, on the part of priests. Here I understand it. He really did not say this, but here we are, they say, a priest. We are already sitting on the top of the mountain. We know the truth, so to speak. We have come closer to God, and are waiting for you, unfortunate scientists, to crawl to us from the foot of this mountain and enlighten. This is how the scientific community, which was invited to this discussion, looked like in the eyes of one of the leading experts in the field of religion, Kirov. I must say that religion is not the only one in this regard. Why? Because there is such a common statement that when scientists finally discover all the secrets of the world and climb to the top of knowledge, they will see their esotericists who have been sitting on this peak for a long time. So, well, I'm not going to comment on all these contradictions between esotericism, religion, and science. I can say that these three directions have existed for a very long time. Practically, I think, from the moment when the first shamans appeared. And there is a constant struggle going on between these directions, an incessant struggle that sometimes comes to war, and a bloody war at that. It is enough to recall the bonfires of the Inquisition when priests burned esotericists. It was enough to recall the Soviet Union when the materialists destroyed churches. So this struggle and this war, from my point of view, it is due to the fact that each of the camps strives to create a world that seems ideal to him and does not accept another version. Therefore, our task, taking into account the version that I told at the very beginning, namely the assumption that the world of the future, it will be very different, and there will find all the place, probably a transhumanist person, and probably a religious person, and probably an esoteric person. Our task is not to push these currents together, but to try to at least hear different versions of the future in words, from representatives of different schools. And we start today with esotericism. Why? Because, well, first of all, esotericism is the oldest method of studying the world through immersion in the subtle world of information. This is, so to speak, a pre-scientific method. Why? Because there is no need to explore the world with instruments. There is no need to explore the world with the help of feelings. It's enough just to immerse yourself in this subtle information world. Materialists do not believe this, but people who communicate with this world, receive this information, know perfectly well that it exists. And, from my point of view, esotericism is the oldest area of human consciousness, which, penetrating into these subtle worlds, finds some truths or some misconceptions there, and we cannot fully understand it. We just take out this esoteric, listen, and I can say that my relationship with esotericism is quite difficult. Why? Because I refer you to the camp of scientists. Here, and then, when the esotericists told me, and I had a lot of communication with them, about some esoteric visions of the world, the cosmos and the subtle world, I listened to them with pleasure, and it was very beneficial to me. But when esotericists descended to earth, sinful ones, and began to tell me how a person happened, or how, let's say, the simplest material objects are arranged, here, to be honest, my ears were envious, curled up into a ball, because it was impossible to listen to this, from my point of view, from the point of view of a classical representative of a scientific school. That is, I have a complicated relationship with esotericism, but in this case we invited esotericism from a very good, I would say, line from my point of view. Again, why? Because the person we are going to listen to now is Alexander Ku. This is his pseudonym, real name, abbreviated surname, who is an engineer by education, a mechanical engineer, and, by virtue of his engineering education, he is quite, so to speak, loyal to science and to the study of the material world. Here, I will say two more words about the fact that we are opening a new page of our conversations with you, in which we break away from our earthly roots and go out into the space of space. And here, from my point of view, there are two ways of development. One is purely technocratic. This is a cosmic cybernetic civilization, stellar UFO civilizations, galactic civilizations you see on a tree, a metagalactic civilization, and so on, yes. And on the left, we see some religious and mystical ideas about the future. This is paradise, the kingdom of heaven, God's people, the creators of the heavenly worlds. Something that we scientists in general have no idea about, but we constantly hear about this future from various very, so to speak, mystical and religious schools. Here, now it means that I will introduce you very briefly, because you can tell a lot about Alexander. His pseudonym is Cool. He is our stalker in this world of esotericism. He was born on the 19th of May, by the way, like me in the 62nd year. Graduated from the Leningrad Polytechnic Institute, a mechanical engineer, now works as a foreman of an assembler at the Mariinsky Theater. For 30 years, he has been studying all the esoteric teachings that appeared after Blavatsky, including various mystical sects. He's talking about himself. I hope that he will agree with his own text that he sent me by email. Here, Alice Bailey has people like me called a new group of world ministers, or people of goodwill. Their task is to contribute to the approach of the age of light. So one of Alexander's greatest achievements, from my point of view, is that he discovered Henry Lorenzi, or Lorenzi for Russian readers. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his last name. This is an esotericist, the last of the major esotericists, in which we practically knew nothing in Russia, before Alexander began translating his works from English. He left this huge legacy of about 4,000 pages. And Larina's name is inextricably linked with the hysterical teaching of the Pythagoreans, which is called Hylozoics. Hylozoics. For me, the word is unusual and difficult to pronounce. This is the text that I took, so to speak, from the text that Alexander sent me. Lorenzi believed that at the dawn of a new world era, the ethical knowledge previously available only to a limited number of secret schools would begin to be widely disseminated, popularized, and thus distorted. However, the need for such knowledge will be felt more and more as traditional religions are degenerating. And physicalistic views based on natural sciences are mostly untenable as a worldview. The term physicalism, using Florence as a designation for the false idea that there is only physical reality. Here, well, I'm not going to comment on this text, because I have my own idea about everything about it. This is what Alexander wrote. And the last slide. Then we begin to listen to Alexander. Yes, I took this too, so to speak, from his messages. It means that Lorenzia assumes that a long stage of evolution will take place, which will lead to the emergence of a new type of person, living in harmony with himself and his environment, a person living at the upper limit of his creative power. The planetary hierarchy provides that the higher mental development in 500 years will lead to the fact that the members of the elite will communicate with each other using telepathy. This is Lorenz's forecast. When we learn to receive all the necessary vital energy from the surrounding etheric world, we will no longer need to use coarse physical food, take. Well, such a thesis is important, right? And then the last one. All of these things are stages of the systemic epherization of humanity. A process that, when it is completed, will lead to the fact that a person will no longer incarnate in the body. Well, I repeat again, I could fill the entire space of our time with these quotes from Lawrence here, because he is a very interesting author. But I think that his foresight, so to speak, is related to our topic, well, the brightest or the strongest. Therefore, this is where I end my presentation. Well, there's more about Lawrenci. I think that's enough. And we include, so to speak, our esteemed Alexander. Here. Well, Alexander, I introduced you as best I could, and I presented this direction as best I could. Yes, please forgive me for such a defiant background from behind. Yes, this in no way means some sanctity of my personality. This assumes that all people have, first of all, auras, and secondly, the future is just aimed at making us all so radiant, climbing up the ladder of evolution. This is such a symbol of our theme. Here, Alexandrovich, you also need to change, because you are somehow stuck in the forest there. Masha is in the kitchen. Well, it's a joke? Okay. Well, Alexander, come on, we're listening to you. So, well, I'll probably turn on the screen demonstration right away. Yes, come on. It is necessary. It works, right? No, not yet. And now I'll let you do it, yes. I forgot to do it. As a demonstration, you can merge several participants at the same time. That's it. Now you can turn it on for me. Yeah, right. Sergey Ivanovich. Yes. You came down this staircase to us, I take it. No. Here you have listened to the most important thing. We will cut it out, of course. The symbol of our next cycle is that we all have to see how climbing the stairs you can climb to the very top and become a bright being of the future. Well, you have a halo there. Do you understand what's going on? I thought you'd already come down from there. Here you are listening again. I'm talking about the fact that this is the future with a halo. It awaits us all. I get it. It's like a symbol of the future. Well, that doesn't mean I'm a symbol of humanity. People will understand more like I do to you. Different. Visible. Is the picture visible? Yes. Yes, I know, of course, that the people will understand exactly that, so I justified myself in advance. Well, since Sergey Ivanovich has already told almost everything about me that I wanted, I'll start further with this picture, which can illustrate the topic about the halo. Here, on my example, the ladder of evolution that I went through in this incarnation is drawn in a rather simple way. Since all esotericists believe in the theory of reincarnation, I have no doubt that I have had many previous lives in the past, and in these past lives, a person achieves different results, passing, developing in past lives. As we know at school, when a person gets into a class, some study well, others are average, and others are very bad. And this is a consequence of the fact that everyone has a very different history in the past. Someone in past lives was a good student and moved and became an excellent student in this life, and someone was an average person, and he falls into the total mass of people who make up the majority in our time on the planet, and someone is a two-biter, they seem to be. And first, I will illustrate this diagram with my own example. Each person is, in addition to being a unit, a whole, a kind of community in which everything is harmoniously linked. And acting as a unit, as a whole, he also consists of parts. And in addition to the parts that exist in our physical body, there are arms, legs, bones, soft tissues, the brain there, and so on. He still has parts in the subtle worlds, which, according to esotericists, also make up the personality of a person. A person's personality is not only his dense body, but also thin shells. He still has an etheric shell, an emotional shell, a mental shell. It's like the shells of the personality, and the higher shells that are in it are the shell of the soul and the shell of the spirit. So, here is a person, as scientists know, in the womb of the mother, goes through all the evolution that has passed at all. Evolution, starting from the mineral kingdom, yes, we all know that in the womb. It begins with almost a representative of some kind of pebble, then a cell, then a tadpole, and so on. In general, the whole evolution takes place in the womb, and he is born as a man. So, from the point of view of esotericists, his accelerated repetition of past lives does not end there. Only the phase that was associated with the evolution to the human kingdom ends. Having already been born from the womb, he also accelerates through the following stages that he passed in past lives. And these stages are connected. These stages develop over 7-year cycles. Almost all esoteric teachings agree on this, that these cycles are 7-year cycles. And I also have a scientist, Prana, who is a very important founder in the science of the same topic. Unfortunately, his book has not been published yet, but in the 30s it was published. Here, I also wrote about the 7-year cyclone and studied them in great detail. And here is each person. Here I am on my own example. I was born. The first step. A child is born and is at the stage of barbarism. That is, this is the step at which people have been in the primitive communal system for a very long time. Then a person, then it is written in my mind as if he enters school, and he goes to the stage of civilization. By this point, he is already practically getting acquainted with everything that people have gone through up to our time. Then you can. And so at the Institute, I was like an atheist and studied all the scientific doctrine that was taught at school and at the Institute. And I was a confident atheist. And then I still had some things that didn't make ends meet there. And I sat down for several years in the Saltykov-Shchedrin Public Library. But it is located here, well, like Lenin's library in Moscow. The most outstanding library before Lenin's library appeared, and it was the most important library in Russia. So I started digging there, and at first became interested in all the best that humanity had in culture. These are all sorts of philosophers, the best works of classics, classical music, and, as it were, rose to the stage of culture. In other words, the next stage of humanity, when people continue to evolve, is not all. The majority of humanity, 85%, is still stuck at the stage of evolution, at the stage of civilization. The best part of humanity is only 15% out of 100. And now these people are already rising to the next step, and they belong to the stage of culture. This is the stage I tried to master after the Institute. I studied various books in the public library. These were the years of Gorbachev's perestroika. A huge number of thick magazines of various information that was previously unavailable, including on mysticism, esotericism, and religions, have fallen on us. And almost immediately, I simultaneously had a split into the stage of culture and the stage of mysticism. This is the same step, but people sometimes emphasize a little, someone is more interested in a purely humanitarian, secular component. This is a stage of culture, and someone hits into mysticism. I studied both of them with pleasure and, of course, plunged into religions first. In religion, and then, as if in addition to religion, there were Hare Krishnas, I came across somewhere on trains. Some Jehovah's Witnesses, Baptists. I talked to all of them and realized that the world of religion is very diverse. And then, somehow, I came out with the help of some lectures on S. I even managed to walk for 2 or 3 months. I was very interested in all this. These were the Kashpirev-Chumaks. Society, as it were, after atheistic decades, has been rapidly developing interest in this direction. And here I also have the stage of mysticism, too, as if it were very accentuated. Well, the next step that I ascended after some time is the stage of humanity. This is an even higher step. There are even fewer people on it, and many of them do not know that they are on this step. They, as a rule, relate simply to the intelligentsia, which is interested in either religion or esotericism or science. But they can all be at a higher stage than the stage of culture, which is called the stage of humanity. And the very last step that humanity as a whole should reach, as Sergei Ivanovich said, he portrayed himself as a representative of all mankind. And here it will appear to us at the stage of ideality. I haven't drawn it yet, because I haven't reached it, and I'm only trying to master the stage of humanity. I don't want to overestimate myself. But it's like a higher stage than the stage of culture. So we move on. So something is not moving for me. And here, So, being interested in mysticism, I read, it was the years of the early 90s. There was no internet. There were no texts online. There was no online library. I read a lot of different mystical literature, but immediately responded to esotericism. Here someone is distracted by orthodoxy, someone by the Quran, by any traditional religion, some Buddhists. I responded to esotericism. Galloping across Europe, I studied revered religions. They were not interesting to me, with the exception of the New Testament, which I really liked, and somehow I was not interested in religions. Esotericism gave me much more interesting food for thought. These books, there is a huge amount of mysticism and esotericism, and at first I did not understand what their difference was. So, but over time, as it were, the Rorik's teaching became the main teaching for me. I got into such a sect. Well, your emphasis is still on common sense and on specifics, although mysticism is also present. But I will try to take into account your wishes to say something more specifically. But nevertheless, esotericists always start from the general, from the global, from such Philenic scales, and on. And by analogy with these universal tasks, they show the role of man in this general whole. Just like talking about a person in our modern society, in isolation from Russia, from the whole planet, from global processes of some kind. But if he lives some shepherd in the village, well, who is interested in hearing about his specifics, how to graze cows, I want to know his place in general in the state, on the planet as a whole. What is his role? What is his future? Here, I think it should be connected. Some major fundamental global processes and the life of a little man, how he fits into all this and what prospects he has. All right, all right. So look, I'm going to give the go-ahead now. I'm going to make an introduction explaining why we're taking a break, why my background has changed, then you'll continue, okay. All right. Good afternoon, dear viewers of the channel. Unfortunately, our connection was interrupted in the previous recording, so we resumed this conversation after a short break. There was a version that evil forces intervened here. There was a version that some cosmic currents were simply too large, so to speak, called upon here. And there was even such a version that my ambitious background caused such changes, so to speak, in the information space of the universe. And this forced, so to speak, the higher forces to interrupt this recording. So I changed the background, as you can see, to a more modest, calm one here. But this is all a joke. So we give the floor to Alexander Ku, who will continue his conversation and tell us about how esotericism, from his point of view, and from the point of view of those esoteric authorities whom he knows, imagines the future life of an individual, and how it represents the future life of humanity as a whole. It is desirable, of course, that it be in three stages, the near, the middle, and the farthest that can only be viewed. Alexander, we present you the word. We are listening to you. You can include the presentation, you cannot include it. Well, that's the scheme I started with. It's just that I'll push off from it and go further. Well, the truth is, I also want to announce the fourth version, according to which our conference was interrupted. In my opinion, it was connected with the fact that it was very important to continue from the moment I disconnected. Here is your kind of reaction to what happened. And in my opinion, here I have a continuation of all this posted on my website, as it were, how you continued to react to my disconnection from the internet. So here's the fourth version. It was useful to hear your comments like this. So, well, last time I started fluently. Now I repeat simply that every person passes. Among the esotericists, one of the most important doctrines is the doctrine of reincarnation. And last time I said that in the womb of a mother, a person goes through the entire evolution of humanity at an accelerated rate. From a cell, then through a tadpole, and there to being born a human being. And that for the first 7 years, he repeats all his past lives that he lived before this incarnation. And he has already lived a lot of lives, and in different indigenous races. And now almost everyone knows that the esotericists have such a version that there was a continent of Lemuria, on which the third root race developed. Then it sank in the Pacific Ocean. The continent of Atlantis appeared in the Atlantic Ocean. Plato mentions the island of Poseidonis, so this is one of the last pieces of Atlantis. First, the huge island of Atlantis sank, then a slightly smaller island, and Poseidon. This was the very last remnant of Atlantis. And then the development of the Aryan root race, to which we belong, has already begun. So, a person, being born from the womb of his mother, he passes the first 7 years of accelerated all these. All this way, which took place in Lemuria, in Atlantis, and in the past Zabraces of the Aryan race. And so I showed by my example that this is how he climbs the steps, which is depicted on this diagram. And I depicted it by my example. And now the level of a person is the one that he has in the first 7 years. In the second and third, they are completely different. But it is always visible that the child is constantly developing. He is becoming more and more adult. And when he becomes an adult, as a rule, he stops at some point, at the point at which he finished his development in past lives. And if he finished at the level of some undeveloped person, then he will continue to live as an undeveloped person all his life. And if he repeats his path at an accelerated pace and reaches those peaks that he finished in past lives, and he is high in past lives, if he has risen, well, for example, a very cultured, humane, intelligently developed, mentally developed person, if he has already finished at this point in past lives, then, as a rule, he will definitely reach this point in this life. Maybe with some delays, but it will lead to this level. And the rest of his life will already continue from a higher point than ordinary people who continue their development, well, from lower points. And here is this drawing. He illustrates a little bit as if this situation. And then, it means that I have briefly shown here that I have read a lot of books on mysticism. It was at a transitional moment when I was moving from the stage of civilization, where the majority of our humanity is located, to the stage of culture. And here I will also show that my first job as an engineer, it allowed me to travel around our country a lot. Here are the yellow dots. These are everywhere I have visited on the territory of our country. And the red lines are by rail when I moved to them. And my second job in the theater allowed me to move around the whole planet. There are several places in America, in the Canaries, and in Spain. Cyprus there, Athens there. Well, in general, and here are the places where I visited Russia, the Far East, Japan, Taiwan, Beijing. Well, just as if it allowed me to get acquainted with different peoples, with different cultures, and understand that Russia, although an important place and my favorite, but that there are other peoples who also have their own missions, their own tasks. So, and it was important to sort of get to know this. And now I will say 2 words. After my story, probably someone will want to know where to find this information. Here I have a website that is called like this. There is a page on it that has all the data about me, and there is also a forum on this site, and I use it as a repository of different topics. In other words, this is not the place where I discuss with someone, but where I have sorted out various topics by departments, on which there is a lot of information that will be touched upon today. And I also have on YouTube, again, people want, if they want to delve into what I have time to tell, then they can. A lot has already been told on my YouTube channel. He's my kind of nickname, and there's a link to the site on it too. So, and the last thing I want to say is that we have already mentioned Henry Lorenzi a little bit. In the introduction we said about him, this is like the very last word from the hierarchy of light forces, the most fundamental esoteric teaching that appeared in Russian only in the spring. I translated it in a year. I translated it in full. And today, all the books are available for this new teaching. Neither Theosophists, nor the Roriks, nor the Steiners know anything about him. It was practically not discussed on the forums, because it was not in Russian. And the contact page, it has all the information about this teaching. Here there are videos on it. There are files in this section on the page. There are all the books laid out, which I translated. Here again, there are links to all sites, the international site, my site, books. And here's another thing I gave in this group dedicated to Jelizoika. Here are all the books that I translated. There are still in the cloud. There is a link to this cloud here again, in that Jelizoik group. And look at how many books on Gazoika I have translated. These are very thick books, and for a whole year I translated them from morning to evening. I strongly advise you to get acquainted with this teaching. So, further on the site, I have a page where the official version of science about what the past of humanity is set out. That's where I didn't get carried away. I told her everything that history knows about our entire development. In order to talk about the future, it is very important for people to get acquainted with those who still do not remember the whole history of mankind very well. I have all the schemes there. All these periods there, when dinosaurs were there, when man appeared there. That's all reflected. But the esoteric version is like a little different. And here I have already told somewhere that humanity has passed through the mineral kingdom, through the vegetable kingdom, through the animal kingdom in previous stages, and while it is on the step here is man, the kingdom of man. But further kingdoms are shown in this diagram. It's very cursory, conditionally, but in the terminology that I had before I met Lorenzi, there is such a term Mahatmas. Our older brothers who are ahead of humanity in terms of development are present on planet Earth and know everything about our past, know everything about our future for several million years ahead, and they send this information through their students at different times, in the terminology that is available to the contemporaries of their students who incarnate on Earth. And I will present today the version that the Mahatmas have already reported through the Josephists, through the Reich, but mainly through the Lorenzi gene, because this is the latest version of esotericism. Here is the stage of humanity. I am already familiar with this latter, Sergei Ivanovich. I have already laid it out exactly the fourth human kingdom of humanity. I have laid out, as it were, what kind of people we have on the planet in terms of development. There are such primitive people. There are such hard workers, and at different levels, not developed at all. There are skilled hard workers. There are already hard-working managers, foremen who can manage small groups of workers, but are not able to manage large collectives, some research institutes, some factories, armies. Here they manage only small such teams. And already such a peak of humanity is those who are able to manage large groups of people, factories, research institutes, armies, brigades there, regiments, divisions. That is, the scale is clear, right? But these people can be developed and are not connected with the leadership line. They can be outstanding scientists who do not need to lead large groups. For a scientist, it is enough to have a circle of like-minded people. There are 12 people of their level. If he communicates with them, reads international magazines, then he does not need to discuss anything with the hard workers, or with some foreman of the hard workers. His circle is enough for him. The same goes for artists or religious figures. They often do not have to lead any large collectives, but they can at the same time be at the upper stages of human development. And finally, the highest stage of evolution in our human kingdom is the accepted disciples of the Hatam. These are those who are not Mahatmas yet, but who have a connection with them. And through them, when they are incarnated in this or that epoch, some new knowledge from the Mahatmas is brought to humanity, which correspond to the civilization that humanity reached at that particular time when their disciples were incarnated on Earth. And then even higher steps. People don't know about them, and even the Mahatmas disciples don't know much about them, because they are even higher than the Mahatmas. Therefore, we will not go there yet. And so I also want to acquire such a ladder of evolution, which I compared with the ordinary life of a person, which is familiar to a fairly highly developed representative of humanity of our time. As a rule, this is a person who has received a higher education, which means he has passed such large steps. He had a major step when he was in kindergarten before school, or somewhere with his parents, with grandmothers. This is one big step that he passed. It matches, but I'll tell you that later. The next step was when he was in school. And now all this major step can be broken down with small steps. There is primary school, secondary, final exams. But all this is a school. This is all a big step called school. If he is a sufficiently developed person, then, as a rule, he also receives a higher education. And developed people. This is not the rule, and highly developed people can do without higher education. There are such examples, and I have met such people in my life. But if we talk about general rules, highly developed people of our time, as a rule, receive higher education. And this is another major step, which can also be divided into the first course, the second. Some of them fly off, and they are kicked out of the institute when they entered there for a scam, or they got some kind of exam there. But then the exams show that they are not able to cope with the program. They are kicked out from the first or second courses. And already those who are sufficiently developed, they graduate from the institute, get a diploma there. And here comes the end of another major step in the evolution of a particular person. And then, if he is even more developed, then, as a rule, he does not go to production, but enters graduate school, finishes graduate school, writes a candidate's minimum there, defends a candidate's doctoral, and he becomes an outstanding, or a scientist who officially has the status of a recognized scientist. If he has a doctoral dissertation, then everyone takes his opinion into account. Some representatives in society who do not understand something, they turn to doctors of sciences, to academicians. And if doctors of sciences and academicians speak about something, it is considered that their opinion is authoritative. This is the pinnacle of what can be achieved on the social ladder in our time. Here are developed people. I say again that there are exceptions who are very highly developed people, but have not walked up this ladder of the institute. Graduate school, PhD, doctoral. But the general rule is as follows. And then I want to draw some analogy. That's how in a concrete life, we are the first steps. We are accelerating through the steps that we have passed. Here I have depicted another staircase nearby, which our scientists do not officially recognize yet. But all esotericists are now, almost all esotericists are sure that there were previous indigenous races, in which we passed a certain history, our humanity. And so I named these large steps in this way. The third root race is the Lemurians, the fourth root race is the Atlantans, the fifth root race of our modern is the Aryans. The sixth root race is still ahead of us, and many esotericists there now. Mystics very much expect that we will join this sixth root race almost tomorrow. This already directly concerns our topic today, but in fact, it is greatly exaggerated information that the sixth root race will begin in the coming decades. Although even the Rorics, such advanced esotericists, believe that after small perturbations, some cataclysms, we will enter the sixth root race in the coming decades. The more fundamental teachings are hysterical. They correct this mistake and say that we still have many centuries to live before the sixth root race in its already advanced state. But this is very close, nevertheless, the sixth root race. Although, no, perhaps, the sixth subrace of the sixth, fifth root race is close, and the sixth root race is quite far away. But I will say more about this. In this diagram, I showed at the same time that the task of the third root race, the Lemurian, was the same as in kindergarten, in our incarnation, when we are born and go through accelerated evolution. Here we are in kindergarten, and before school, we go through what all the people of the whole planet went through in the Lemurian root race. When we enter school and go to college, we repeat the accelerated development of the Atlantan race. It was the task of developing an emotional shell. Then, when we enter high school and the institute, we pass and we are in it, as it were, moving towards the tasks that the fifth root race is designed to solve. That's until the entire humanity of the planet curls its intelligence to the level at which those who study at the Institute are. And we know perfectly well that only a small part of people who have graduated from high school actually enter the Institute. Well, we know that there are good, excellent students who are able to enter the Institute. And there is such a part of the category of triples, twos, with difficulty 4/4s who study. Here they will be hard workers, although highly qualified, perhaps, but they will not enter the Institute. And I'm not talking about some complicated higher education, some physical sciences, some universities, EMSU there. Well, they have no chance to enter such a higher educational institution. But when the fifth root race ends, almost all people will. Their intelligence will reach a level that those who enter physics there now have. And here are higher educational institutions of even the highest level, which are both abroad and in our country. Well, the sixth root race is so far away that I mentioned it when we talk about a more distant perspective. But the immediate prospect is the development of the mental shell. And now the fact that technocracy has appeared and that all the mystics, as it were, have gone to the wrong place for it. We need to end this and develop human abilities. This is what Sergei Ivanovich does not like as a scientist. He says that no, technocracy is needed. It will, as it were, allow us to reach much higher levels. So this is real esotericism, more advanced. It just sees more distant prospects for the development of mankind, and therefore we, knowing that the whole of humanity as a whole will be mentally developed in many centuries only, and only then it will be possible for humanity as a whole to move to higher frontiers, then now the task is, of course. The highly developed part of humanity will already be making some progress towards the sixth root race, and the mystics will have some progress, but the main task on the part of the planetary hierarchy, on the part of the Mahat, is to develop all of humanity to the level of higher education. That's so that they all have a higher education, so that their mentality is very, well, more highly developed. And for this, all the technocracy that we are developing now, it contributes a lot to this. Computers, the ability to get knowledge on the internet in the most backward places of the planet. Now, if a person lives in a village and he has the internet there, then he can get acquainted with all textbooks on the internet. He can learn languages. English can learn a language, get acquainted with the education of even Western countries, with their textbooks. In other words, he can get a good education, even if he is studying in some village. That is, all this technocracy, satellites, that's what. The fact that we went into space, and thanks to this, we will soon have satellite internet, which will be available in any village. Broadband internet, as if it will be possible for everyone, wherever they are, in the most dense places of the planet. First of all, to communicate with each other. The planet is certainly moving towards becoming one. This is a very important task. She, her Mahatma, is set as one of the main ones. And here is the whole technocracy, which over the past decade has greatly accelerated our achievement in this direction. Now there are no problems for us to contact the interlocutor in America, even on an island. On some kind of satellite communications we can contact. In other words, here we are now watching news on TV, on the internet in all parts of the planet there. This is a very important part of human development. We must definitely come to her. And if now, as the mystics say, we go towards meditation, some kind of tree, into a cave, in the mountains somewhere to hide, then ordinary people will do it. Well, I'm not even talking about the advanced part of humanity. Even she is not ready for this yet. 3 or 4 people on the planet are ready for this. It's really possible to sit in a cave and get in touch with each other there. Well, maybe not 3, maybe 15 people on the planet. Even the best elite about humanity is not ready to communicate with each other under a tree, meditate, and develop their chakras there, to open somewhere and fly to other planets. People are not ready for this now. And so this is a very distant prospect, a real prospect. This is to develop a technocracy. But technocracy is very dangerous, very dangerous. The previous Atlantean race ended its existence precisely due to the fact that people received such knowledge, for which they were not ethically ready, and they started using it as based on selfish goals. In other words, even in those days, there was an elite stratum on Atlantis, and the masses less educated. So the elite stratum, using their knowledge, turned these peoples into slaves. Well, how do we use the animal kingdom, regardless of the fact that there it is also like living creatures, living beings? They wanted to kill them for meat. They wanted to plow a vegetable garden for them. They wanted to put some kind of wool in a pen there. There is no big ethical problem for us, but to exploit domestic animals somehow. But the elite, in the same way, for them there is no ethical problem in exploiting undeveloped peoples. From the point of view of Mahat and the planetary government, this is wrong. Developed people should not exploit undeveloped peoples, but before them like this. As adults are assistants for children in their accelerated evolution. They help in kindergarten to get the knowledge that can be obtained in kindergarten. They help in school to unlearn. And school education is free in almost all countries. In the same way, developed countries, here is the West, Japan, America, Russia, they should help undeveloped people. To get the education that we have in Western countries. This is for all the countries of Africa, the undeveloped peoples of China, India, and South America. We need Western countries to help them get a normal education. Help them get jobs in factories where they would have the opportunity to develop their intelligence. As I said, here is work in such large Western countries. She is already a hard worker. Not at all the one who was before the revolution in Russia. We had, well, some more skilled workers there, but mostly our population lived in rural areas. They walked there in bast shoes. And most of the years they were barefoot there in some kind of shirt, in some pants, and they had a candle at home, and that was it. That is, they have. Well, in the church, they received some rudimentary knowledge from the clergy. That is, the level of hard workers was very low. Here is our Soviet government allowed hard workers to get, well, a social elevator, such as there was no such social elevator anywhere in the USSR. And here are many relatives of Sergei Ivanovich. He has all relatives from the village. And he became an outstanding, brilliant scientist of our time. For example, I have all my relatives all from the village, on my mother's side in a remote village of the Volga region. Somewhere on the outskirts of civilization, a swamp of 100 kilometers of this size began nearby and, well, the lowest level was rural. Dad also has a village on the Volga. I went there all my childhood. There was also such an extremely undeveloped village. And I know what people were like in Russia, 90% of the population, what were they like? And my father got a higher education. My mother got a higher education. They got a free 3-room apartment in our country. The children were given a higher education, me and my brother. In other words, this is the task of the near future for the whole planet, for all undeveloped peoples, for all non-deputies, to give a good education, to arrange them for some good enterprises where they would study. Well, here you can still read about these indigenous races. I'm getting a little carried away right now. So, even further, it is very important to say the following. Each person, if we consider a particular person, there are several components in it. It seems to us that he is. Here we communicate with some person, and we make an assessment. This is not a developed person. This is a developed person. This is an intelligent person. In fact, in each of these people, whom I have named, some level of development simply dominates. But on the other hand, all 4 stages are present in it, which are now in the average person. There is definitely a barbarian in it. And so if we had to quarrel with someone very much in life, so that we almost fought, then we actually went down to the barbarian step. Even we who have received higher education, have become intelligent there. We do not swear with obscenities. And in childhood, we manage to quarrel and fight with someone with obscenities. This is the stage of barbarism, and we still have it. We are even now in adulthood, in transport, if we are gathered there in some kind of sweaty, stuffy room, locked up. We can easily fight there, if we are deprived of more food there and, as it were, put absolutely critical conditions. People of the stage of civilization are our main component. That is, despite the fact that we can be some kind of intellectuals, read smart books there on science, art, philosophy, but we still have a huge component in common. Well, such an ordinary person who, well, lives according to generally accepted laws like everyone else. He would like to live a little better and a little more correctly, but our environment puts us in such a framework that we, well, have to obey us and a lot of norms that are accepted for the whole majority. We just have to obey these norms, although we would be willing to live by other, higher standards. And within us, accordingly, these generally accepted norms are also, as it were, also present in us. And we have a higher component in each of us, which connects us with God, which strives to improve, which makes our conscience suffer when we do something bad. So we broke down, did something bad, and then our conscience gnaws at us. Why did you do such a bad thing? Well, look, this is unacceptable. This is some kind of animal. The animal principle has awakened in you. You had no right to do that. And now there is a higher component in each of us. And all of them together make up a single whole, and it is impossible to tear off any of them. You can slowly get over it. That's the worst thing about a person. As if you imagine a bucket in which 3 colors of stones were put. There are blue, green, and brown. That's brown. Well, there are a few of them, but they are in our bucket. Green is the majority of them. Blue, but there are not very many of them either. And our task is to gradually remove from this bucket, from our common whole, from our personality. It is desirable to remove these brown ones and replace them with either green or blue ones. This is the task of each person. So, let's move on. Russia. Russia is a social organism. That's how I drew the man now, and that there is brown, green, and blue in him. And so there are a lot of different social organisms in the social organism called Russia. Here are all sorts of scientists, cultural figures. There are different communities in the cities. These are all such social organisms. And Russia as a whole can also be divided, which we have if we divide it completely into large parts. Then there are such ground social organisms. These are people at the stage of barbarism. But they are already there, and there is a lot of civilization in them. But often there is a lot of barbaric stuff in them. They swear, look obscenely, and in some kind. Culturally, they are not very developed. They watch and listen to some nonsense. There are people of civilization in whom there is also something not very good, but on average, they seem to already know how to behave decently, especially if the conditions are not very extreme, but they make up the majority. And there is such an elite social stratum in which it is already very different from ordinary people. Well, Dmitry Sergeyevich Likhachев, well, how can you call him an ordinary person? He really died, but everyone remembers what kind of representative of the intelligentsia he was, well, of an unattainable height in my opinion. Such an intellectual was of the highest level. Or Danil Granin, for example, here in St. Petersburg. Well, there are such people. And here are our interlocutors who are present in our conversation. They also belong to this blue level. In other words, they are at the stages of culture and the stage of humanity, but they also have a man of the stage of civilization, and even a man of the stage of barbarism, unfortunately. Sometimes we break down. There is a page here about the future, where all this is told in detail from the Mahatmas, which was given in the 20th century. Here on my website is about the 6th root race. This is why I kind of want to give this information an opportunity to read in more detail, because many mystics believe that the 6th root race will be here tomorrow. This is the myth I would like to dispel, and it is described in detail here on my website. The next page tells about the situation on the planet as it was after the Great Patriotic War, after the Second World War. Here, a few pages are given from the hierarchy of light forces, which outline all the problems that our humanity faces today. In order to know where we are going tomorrow, we need to know the current situation on the planet. Here I have all the links with a detailed story about what the most important problems humanity needs to solve right now. Here on the website, here are 002 fundamental historical teachings, quotes on various topics, the situation on the planet. Very detailed. Further classification of the sources of spiritual teachings and methods of their reception, so that there is no confusion, that everyone who wants to be called Mahat disciples and what he gets from Mahat. 90% of the information that we can read in books now in bookstores, it is set out by imposters, who consider themselves students of Mahat, but who give a fuck. There were only 2 or 3 true disciples of Mahat in the 20th century, and here's how to distinguish them. Here it is written in the topic of classification of sources that are accepted here. It is located in the topic 002, a quote on various topics, a classification of sources. Next, what are the real disciples of Mahata? Here is a separate topic about it. What is the dedication to the disciple Mahata and the dangers of developing extrasensory perception? Here's me, in my opinion, Masha said. And what about the last time, and after I switched off, and what is the practice? And now she herself said that she was doing yoga. So the Mahatma claims that this whole huge number of brothers is mystical, psychic. They are engaged in very, very wrong activities. This is categorically prohibited for those who want to develop properly, engage in the development of their chakras, engage in these meditations, practices that are with the help of yoga schools, qigong, and so on. Here are all those who say that these esoteric theorists, we don't need all this nonsense, give us practice. So that's why I gave this information to the danger of developing lower psychism and extrasensory perception. The Mahatmas claim that our clergymen in this, as it were, just support the line that comes from the Mahat. Although they are called esotericism by Tanism, but we agree on this. It is strictly forbidden to engage in meditation on the chakras, to develop these psychic powers of one's own. Strictly forbidden. But those who do it, they do it at their own risk. Please study. But you have a very negative future ahead of you both in this incarnation and in the next incarnations. Read the details on my website. I have collected the most important information on this topic from Mahat students. Then, and the last thing I wanted more, why do we need different Gregors? So Sergei Ivanovich began to tell from a scientific point of view that the next phase of human development is not connected with individuals, not with the appearance of Leonardo da Vinci, Lomonosov, Newtons, but with the appearance of social organisms of the same level as Leonardo. In other words, it should not be just one person in 100 years, but a whole group should be as developed as Leonardo was. This is the future of the nearest humanity. That's what I can tell you more about now. But now it's like a little further. Is that why different Gregors are needed? Because there are undeveloped people on Earth, and the average majority, and very developed. If they study in the same classrooms, it's as if now we are all forced to study only in elementary school. Both academicians and Sergei Ivanovich said, no institutes. You finish 3 grades of elementary school, and that's it, go to work. You're not supposed to have any secondary education. It's Satanism. No higher, it's all devilry. Here are 3 classes I got, and then on the basis of this knowledge, please, here's work. Try to do science. But no more than 3 classes. That's about the level we are at now, our entire civilization. We are forbidden to study esoteric teachings and forced to study traditional religions, which are the primary school of spiritual knowledge. In other words, we are given knowledge that, compared to which, well, esotericism is already a secondary school. And Lorenzi gave, well, preparatory courses for admission to the institute. It's not even an institute. What esotericists are studying right now, and what we can read from Lorenzi, these are just preparatory classes. Of those who know how to study well in high school, it gives them the opportunity to prepare now, and in 100, 200, 300 years, the Mahatmas will incarnate among us. They are already preparing for this. They announced that such a decision had been made, and Christ would be incarnated, but not in the way that Sergei Ivanovich said. that if he were to incarnate now and try to come to some hierarchs of Christianity and say, "Here I have come, let me help you explain to humanity what they need to do," they would have taken him for a heretic and kicked him out. They wouldn't accept him. Well, actually, Dostoevsky described this situation very accurately in The Brothers Karamazov. It says there that the legend of the great Exquisitor, the Inquisitor. This is exactly what will happen. What happens during the 20th century, the disciples of Mahat experienced everything that Christ experienced when he wrote this story in the Grand Inquisitor Dostoevsky. All of this was experienced by Mahat's disciples, and that is why we have said the following to Mahat: "For the time being, we will send our disciples to you on earth." Naturally, we know that they will be treated as Dostoevsky wrote about the Grand Inquisitor. We ourselves, but this is their useful school of development for them, and it is useful for students to go through this. We will protect them anyway. We will allow them not to get into too big scrapes when all the ignorant conservative majority turns against them, but they will help make big breakthroughs that will help create a certain atmosphere under the planet, when we ourselves will be able to incarnate on Earth. The Mahatmas have already decided that they will be incarnated, but not in the coming years. That's why different Gregors are needed. Different classes are needed, in which different social organisms are needed, in which the undeveloped will study in one class, the developed in another. But what is unacceptable on the planet for some Hitlers to appear who said, "But they are not developed. They are not needed on our Earth at all." Or here is the idea of the golden billion, which is now spreading. What is its main task? And why do we need this undeveloped cattle? Here we will destroy most of it altogether, leaving only those who will work for us. But the elite deserves to live in good housing conditions, use the latest discoveries. This approach is completely unacceptable, and it can be mixed. Here are the esotericists. They say that there are people of different levels of development, but this is not a fascist theory at all. This is the theory that the more developed should help the less developed. That is, in fact, they should live even a little worse than the average developed ones because they should have some kind of entertainment there. On average, they are allowed to have some kind of fun there, well, some kind of animal joys of their own. Ride, swim, sunbathe. Developed people don't have time for this anymore. They dedicate their lives to the fact that they devote every second of their working time completely only to serving people. And this kind of people, their task is not to earn millions and live on some island and on an airplane there, on some jet, to fly to the office there, give a command there, how to earn money there, as if they would like to return to the island again and swim, sunbathe, drink champagne. No, here are the developed ones. They should help arrange everything on the planet so that even in Africa, even in South America, in Asia, all peoples will rapidly begin to receive a better education so that they have social elevators, so that from any Africa, from Asia, from South America, if a genius is born in any, then here is such an undeveloped country, so that they can get a good education even there, and they can come to the West and get the best education on the planet. Developed nations should come to this. And then, oh, and to tell you about the future, I want to compare the life of our entire planet with the life of an individual. Here is Max Handel, about whom I also, as it were, told Sergei Ivanovich once. He has such a scheme which shows this cycle. Last time, I told you only how he goes through some accelerated repetition of evolution in the womb. And in the first 7 years, yes, Max Handel has a more detailed diagram of how he gets to where he gets to after death, how he gets to the first heaven, the second heaven, the third heaven, and then from this third heaven, he again begins to form new shells for a new ablation, and his birth begins. The first 7 years, the second 7 years, the third 7 years, reaches, as it were, the age at which he finished in past lives. Then he has a need to move in a spiritual direction, in an evolutionary one. Then he dies, goes through these phases again. The first, second, third heaven, and again incarnates. This cycle of humanity goes through many, many times. And these layers, which are called here the first heaven, the second, the third, they are called the physical world, the etheric world, the emotional world, and the mental world. So the whole planet as a whole, not humanity, not the animal kingdom, but the whole planet as a whole. Before we reach our dense state, where we now live on a dense globe, which is depicted in this diagram, and is called the dense planet Earth. But these globes, like a person, have subtle bodies, an emotional etheric shell, an emotional shell, a mental shell, and a shell of the soul, exactly the same. The entire planet as a whole has exactly the same shells, with all its mineral kingdoms, animal kingdoms, human kingdoms of Mahat, and even higher kingdoms of nature. In addition to the fourth kingdom of nature called man, there is a fifth kingdom, which I called the kingdom of Mahat, and the sixth kingdom of nature, where there are already those who are above Mahat. They also exist on our planet. So now we are in that phase of the development of humanity, of the planet, which can be compared with this point of birth, and reaching, as it were, maturity. For several 7 years of humanity, a person passes through to adulthood, and the planet today, it has almost reached adulthood. But it was preceded by several huge cycles lasting many, many millions of years, not hundreds of thousands of years, but hundreds of millions of years. And these millions of years began when the entire planet as a whole, and the people on it, and the animal kingdoms, they were in subtle worlds, then in slightly denser ones, then even denser ones, and only in the fourth great circle did we reach the density phase that scientists are currently studying. That is, there is an analogy between the planet as a whole. Here, the whole planet as a whole should condense from the subtle worlds, become dense, and then these same cycles, they should repeat in the evolutionary direction, but with a developed consciousness. And again, we, all of humanity as a whole, will first get into the etheric world and continue to develop there, then into the emotional world, into the mental world, and into the spiritual world. And this is where our cycle that we have passed on planet Earth will be over. In other words, what we have ahead of us is not development along the line of technocracy, but development along the line of mastering the etheric body, the mental and emotional world. And we have millions of years of development ahead of us. These are the analogy schemes of how the planet as a whole develops, and as an individual. So, a social organism called planet Earth, it is part of the solar system. And the entire solar system as a whole, too, before appearing on the dense plane, which scientists are now studying, it also passed. The entire solar system as a whole went through the same immersion into more subtle worlds, and also in stages. And the whole solar system began its development in the fact that it was only in the subtle worlds then. It went through a new cycle in slightly denser worlds, and then it reached the density system that we can now observe with a telescope. The path of initiation in Max Handel is depicted like this, well, understandable for Christians as a symbol. In other words, all of humanity is going to the top of the mountain in such a spiral. And in order to spiral upward, humanity still has many, many millions of years ahead. And there are Mahatma disciples. Here they are, and those who are preparing to become students, they are not going in a spiral, but directly to the top. And then they accelerate their path of development. And this path of development is called the path of initiations. But among mystics and esotericists, the theme of enlightenment is very much perverted. And one can only read about what a real initiation is, well, in the most recent historical teachings, but especially in Henry Lawrence. So then here is the hierarchy of light. Here I downloaded a diagram from the internet here, what our armed forces look like. Here we have platoons. They are commanded by lieutenants, there are battalions, and these platoons there. They are part of a larger unit called companies. Companies are included in larger units, battalions. Battalions are included in regiments. Regiments are included in divisions. That's the hierarchy of light forces on Earth, in the solar system, and in the Milky Way galaxy, is arranged exactly in this way. And when some mystics say that we are connected with God, we are connected with Jesus by the cross, it's like if Private Titkin said that I have a direct connection with the general who commands the division. Well, that's when he directs me directly, like where to run during the offensive, where to retreat. But this is the same absurdity of our priests' attempts to say that we all have a connection with Christ. With the help of prayer, we can communicate with God. That's complete nonsense. The hierarchy of light forces looks like this. And here is an ordinary man of humanity. He is an ordinary fighter. And the only person with whom he can be connected is he can be connected with a clergyman of some traditional religion who is just a lieutenant. And the lieutenant, when he says that I have a connection with some saints, here with the elders, well, at most with some major, or with some captain, he is connected. Here is some old man who is considered a saint, a very advanced being, but in fact, he definitely cannot have a connection with any god. Well, with someone from the hierarchy of light forces, well, at the level of a major, but most likely a captain. But for an ordinary person to contact someone, a general, a colonel, but this is ridiculous. Imagine that there is a military parade going on, and suddenly a fighter. These fighters are walking along Red Square, like some different divisions, and suddenly one of them runs out of the regiment, runs to the mausoleum, and says, Vladimir Vladimirovich, I want to talk to you. I am the best fighter of this platoon, and I believe that I am worthy to communicate directly with you and give you advice on how to lead our platoon. This is the same nonsense when one of the people says that I can pray to God and enter into direct communication with Him. In fact, there is a hierarchy of light forces. Even on Earth, there are such higher hierarchies, and we can't even contact. Well, we can't contact the battalion level yet. That's why, like this diagram, it is very important to understand how the hierarchy of light forces is arranged. The topic of our meeting is not how the world works, not how the past works, but once again. Well, I agree, but I believe that without to one single question, to which you have not yet given a single text, not a single explanation, about what esotericism sees for man and for humanity in the future. Well, then let me start answering questions so that I don't spread out on the tree. Well, no, well. Tell us, how does an esoteric represent a person of the future? The man of the future in the next century. Some people, here you are in the introduction to our conversation, said that some people will learn to communicate with each other by telepathy. But this will only concern the elite of humanity. The rest of the people will continue their evolution in the technocratic form that exists on Earth now. The task of the higher light forces is only to prevent an atomic war. That's if it happens. This. Here. Alexander, I understand about the task of the higher powers. So you see the future in such a way that there will be more telepathic communication among people. Yes, more and more children. Children will be born who see the etheric plane. That is, if we do not recognize now that there is an ethereal world, and people will be a doctor. Here are the indigo children. Many of them see our chakras, our subtle bodies. What you said about Alakaeva, yes, that she saw through a person. These are the kind of people who will appear. I forgot to say the most important thing. Esotericists, especially Henry Lorenzi, claims that now we are transitioning. Now we are living through a transitional stage between a bright future and a gloomy past. And what, according to Henry Lorenzi, will happen? There will be more and more incarnation of light people, and less and less incarnation of people at the stage of barbarism and the stage of civilization. That is, imagine all that. I see. Yes, there are a lot of undeveloped ones now, but the further away. Understand that our audience is sufficiently prepared. It is clear to us. Here is the general meaning. More and more developed people will be embodied and less developed. Okay, good. Now let's assume that 1,000 years will pass there. So, what will humanity and man look like in 1,000 years from the point of view of esotericism? Let's take two paths then. The first negative, which is most likely. Don't be negative, don't. No, well, no, to be. It is possible for people to understand. Cataclysms. Well, that is, this possibility exists. Cataclysm or natural, or viruses will destroy people, or atomic explosions. This option also exists, but the Mahatmas will do everything to prevent humanity from following it. If everything goes well, with the help of the messengers of the hierarchy of light, we will steer on the right path. Then evolution will continue along the technocratic path. What you draw about robots and attempts to study with the help of cyborgs will definitely continue. We will achieve even greater success in this, but this is a dead end. We will be allowed to indulge with the help of robots and attempts to fly somewhere, but a person will not be able to fly to Mars, because here are our thinner shells. Well, they will not be able to exist there. We are part of planet Earth. Etheric shells, mental ones. Alexander, the second question. 10,000 years have passed, people have played with robots, realized that this is a dead-end path. And then what? Next.
We'll turn off the presentation so that the face can be seen more clearly.
All right. Let's get the presentation out. Oops. So, if we follow the right line of development for some time now, during the transition period, not just a lot of people of the barbarian stage are embodied, but a lot. In other words, in order to move from one civilization to another, to a bright one, it is necessary to destroy. But you talk about it perfectly in all your lectures. The future is so. The past is so conservatively defended by traditionalists of all kinds that, well, they are not ready to accept future epochs. The ideas of advanced scientists have never been recognized. The messengers of light have never been recognized when they were ahead of their time. And in order to facilitate the transition to a brighter future, it will first be destroyed. A lot will be destroyed. And now, and for this it is embodied. Alexander, 10,000 years. By this time, the old remnants of civilization will be destroyed, and a lot of new things will be laid. What will man and humanity look like in 10,000 years? It will be much more rationally arranged, because people will be ruled not by egoists, but by developed people, whose task is to help develop, live on a planet. Yes, they will live on a dense planet, and in more comfortable ones. Physical bodies, not etheric physical bodies. Physical bodies. Will there be robots? There will be. They will make life very much easier. 100,000 years have passed. What will happen to humanity in 100,000 years? 100,000 years. Here is this technocratic civilization, which greatly facilitates the development of the mental development of humanity. But with the help of gadgets, our children learn what we only do. 100,000 years. No need to explain. With the help of technocratic technology, we will have developed everything we need. And mentally, we will be ready to move into the ethereal worlds. That is, are we going live? Yes, we will no longer need to develop the mental. What will happen to the planet? What will happen? The planet will also gradually become more and more refined. That is, well, this. Dissolve, right. She will, it won't. Let me give you an example. I see. That is, we have a water balloon. No, well, you, Sergei Ivanovich, it's clear, the audience does not understand. Water vapor condenses into water, water into ice. We now live on a piece of ice called the dense world. This piece of ice, if you heat it, turns into water, and water into water vapor. In the same way, a dense planet first turns into a more liquid one, and a more liquid one turns into steam. And steam in general into the higher worlds that are there. Here, 100,000 years on the surface of the Earth will no longer be. Well, not 100,000.
Not.
500,000 years, a million years, it doesn't matter. Let's not say now that this is a process. I understand that you understand everything perfectly, but sorry, we just have time. Not in 100,000, but in a very, very many years. Yes, in a very, very many years, everything will be refined. Everything will go into an ethereal state, including the Earth will disappear as a solid planet. For a while, yes. Yes, the Sun will disappear as a solid star. It will just thin out to such an extent that once, yes,
The moment will come when there won't be.
it will not be on the dense plan. Humanity, where will it exist? Humanity then, this is how it gets to the subtle worlds now, even after each life. The soul of a person does not die. So she incarnated on a dense plane, did something on her and died again, right?
Exactly the same.
What will show in a subtle way? That is, here is the whole entire planet. It is now in an embodied state, and it will disincarnate. That's enough. That is, the idea is that. But after that, she will have to incarnate again. That is, as a person reincarnates many times.
Where?
The planet as a whole and the solar system after some time. There is. And galaxies, Alexander. This is completely irrelevant, because there will not be a problem that it is necessary to incarnate from the subtle world. And why incarnate from this beautiful subtle world? That's fine. That's the most important thing. That's because I'm in the past. The rough world begins on you, so to speak, to process stones with a hammer. In detail, about what a person is incarnated for is written in Henry Lawrence's.
It's very detailed there.
Why does humanity incarnate you? A person incarnates in order to be an independent thinker, a creator first of a dense something. Right now, we are learning to create from something dense, from iron, from wood, from everything that we can do with our hands, right? Then the next phase of our development, when we learn to create from the subtle, from the etheric matter. Because everything dense is preceded by mental and etheric prototypes. That is, we will work stop. I'll be sorry, well, just. Yes, please. You're sorry, of course. I would say, no, it's fine. I have already talked so much, now I need to focus on the question. Which is interesting, but the fact is that it will be hard for the audience to listen to such a long conversation.
All right.
I am forced, unfortunately, to a huge here. No, it's fine. I've already told you a lot. Yes, here's putting everything together to the limit. Why? Because, well, I'll tell you later. But the thing is that the following picture turns out that here we are, our souls incarnated on this planet, in order to pass some kind of lesson, to develop. Then, when we reach a certain level, we will again go into subtle plan. Yes. And into our entire material world, our planet, our solar system, they will dissolve into the subtle plane. Yes, that's how a person is. No, I would like to accept how the world sees esotericism. Me. Yes, here she sees. So, all the viewers. Well, I am. This is the second or third time we repeat it. Not that I disagree, but I have a different vision, but not in this. Good. Our task now is not to listen to the opinion of Sergei Ivanovich Suhonos, Alexander Andreevich. But we have already said that's how a person is. The task is to find out, around the world, sees the world and sees the future. After a while, there's through many. The whole planet and the solar system are dissolving, to dissolve in the subtle plane. And these souls who gain experience, they will again begin to incarnate in some kind. Somewhere in the universe, the place of the universe, a friend maybe. I wonder if they will start this stage on you with unicellular dinosaurs, so to speak, stones will be beaten with hammers, so to speak rockets, atomic bombs will explode, or they will somehow start from another moment, and will be on this coffin plan already, another one. Yes, and what do you somehow see is another material plane on which they will incarnate later. Yes, how will it look at least like this? Do you know how? What will it be in material terms? Here is the planet will be like. In material terms, they will be from the subtle world, so they will be the gods who are guiding us now. Right now, we are led by beings who do not need to incarnate, and after some millions of years, we will become those who do not need to incarnate, but who will lead those who need to incarnate. That is, we will pass this phase now, but we will become gods. Well, a primitive word if you call it. We will become them. Period. We put the fact that I will explain why.
Yes.
As long as you say that we will become gods. No, gods of a certain level.
Well, apart from...
Not the highest. That's where the hierarchies are endless. Yes, endless. Then you and I find ourselves, as it were, in a certain, so to speak, understandable space-time for me. That is, we will become all developed souls who, having come to a new point in the universe where there are no such developed souls. Yes. We'll find some raw material. Yes, in the form of such a planet, they are not ready yet. We will help form it ourselves. We will help you form it and start doing it again in a new place. We will form a mineral kingdom on it. That is, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom. Let's bring the animal kingdom to monkeys. Everything is clear. That is, we will begin to be gods already, and so to speak. A certain level of gods, not those who created the galaxies, but those who... Got it? Yes. But the audience may not understand. No, I see. Well, what is not clear? This is the hierarchy. Still some pray to the creator of the universe, who created the galaxies, super. Well, what does he care about our little planet, the creator of the galaxy? No, I'm going to explain my point of view now, she is. It is different from yours. So I understood. It means a very clear scheme, absolutely clear, logical. I want to say the following. So we invited Alexander Ku, not so that he would tell the point of view of Suhonos Sergei Ivanovich Alexandrovich Kashansky or Maria Sergeyevna Suhonos, but so that he would tell us how he sees the future of the esoteric. I believe that our task has been set, brilliantly accomplished, Alexander. Why brilliant? Because I know a lot about Terek. I have read a lot of esoteric literature. And I see in the person of Alexander, from my point of view, a very harmonious, competent, balanced theorist of esotericism who presented us with an esoteric panorama of the past, present, and future. I can't prove it as a hypothesis. I see, yes. In other words, we have completed this task, I think. In other words, we have heard the opinion of one of the advanced esotericists of our world, one of the... I do not know, maybe there are other more advanced esotericists somewhere. But I personally probably have not met more advanced esotericists. I have one friend who is also an esoteric of the highest plan, but since he is a humanitarian, he believes that the technocratic process and development is a terrible evil. It is the wrong way of humanity or something. But he is not an esoteric, he is a mystic. Well, yes, this is another step, to be considered a mystic. That is, this is the first one. And that's why, on behalf of our small team and our viewers, I want to express my deepest gratitude to Alexander for giving us so much interesting information. This is the first one. The second one concerns the correlation of the esoteric picture with the scientific and religious one. I want to say that as a scientist, I am not an expert in the field of religion. We do not have such here. I can say the following, that from the point of view of the logic of development from simple to complex, from, so to speak, ordinary to higher, and from the point of view of the fact that modern science has already begun to recognize the etheric plane. Even monographs are written about this at Moscow State University. Why? Because the 20th century was a complete century of denial of the etheric world. Now this denial is official science. It has stopped attacking the ethereal world. Monographs are appearing. Dissertations are being defended, oddly enough, no matter how forgotten. The string history is all sorts of things there. The vacuum is there, and so on. Yes, well, there's actually a lot going on there. And there are even experiments that confirm the existence of ether. And in this regard, of course, science is comprehending it. Plus the discovery of Kirlian. No one disputes that either. Yes, the exception is ethereal radiation. So what I want to say is that from the point of view of science, not this conservative one in general, which creates committees there to combat pseudoscience, but science in general, which is developing rapidly, yes. There are certain intersections with esotericism. But as a specialist in the field of scientific research of the world, I want to say that this is the picture that Alexander paints in these step ascents. I really like it, why it is similar. But when all the esotericists, including Alexander, begin to describe the past to us in dates, specific physico-chemical processes and images, and the dates are such that mom does not grieve. And they criticize science for the fact that science has no data to judge the past deeper than 10,000 years, or even 5,000 years. Now, although this is not so, because there is anthropology, there is genetics of the same Kolsev, and genetic studies show a lot, that we have from the past, they're 15 million years ago. And anthropology, judging by the remains of some skeletons, there is also a person there who performs a lot. I'm not going to tell you. But I don't agree here. But I want to say that science certainly has a lot of black spots, holes that it is trying to fill. Here, too, it is necessary to understand that esotericism diverges here, and science is very radical. Why? You can make one remark, Sergei Ivan Ivanovich, one literally. Since the time of the Blavatsky Mahat, we have said that many of the dates that we call, including these millions of years of all sorts, we will not tell you that they are correct. Here we are now telling you that they are like that, but in esotericism there is a ban on exact dates. So now we are naming them to you, but many of them, as Blavatsky has already said, will need a few zeros either added or subtracted. That is, they said back in those days that do not consider that these are the exact terms on which it is possible. If we take into account your correction and subtract a few zeros, then this coincides with many, so to speak, scientific ones. Yes, 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 yes. And we warned Mahat even then.
Some will have to be taken away.
I've heard you, yes. So look, what happens? It turns out that esotericists, they explore the world not with the help of facts, nor with the help of radiocarbon analysis, nor with the help of some remnants, nor with the help of five senses and instrument research. Are we taking all of this into account? They take this into account, but they explore the world directly. That is, they get into some subtle world, get direct information from there, and translate this direct information into our human language, and try to tell us how it really was. And here there is, well, just a deep discrepancy between the scientific picture of the world of the past, deep, and esoteric. I'm just stating a fact. I'm not going to say who's right, because you are. Scientists, they will not even discuss the esoteric picture. Unfortunately, yes. For me, they even, as soon as the word esoteric about everything, do not close, and say we do not talk about this topic, sorry, everything. And the esotericists, they will, so to speak, hammer there, so to speak, science for all its shortcomings, so to speak, and they will always do it. These are two camps that are irreconcilable. Why? Until now, science is based on the material world, on the study of this material world, on traces that can be recorded, on the measure of the investigation. Yes, esotericism is based on personal passage into the subtle plane and taking out information from there. And none of them can prove that it is so. Yes, we can't. He just says, I see it that way. No esoteric can come and say, but I see it differently. And no, but I got it from Mahat. And the third one is, but it doesn't matter. And the third one is esoteric. You can say, but I see it like this. None of them can prove their case. Nobody. Nobody. Therefore, they are different pictures of esotericists. There is no evidence base, and, in principle, they do not appeal to the evidence base. They appeal only to one thing, to our intuition, to the integrity, harmony of the paintings. What are we referring to? The Kirlian effect, for example. All right, well, that's understandable. I'm talking about the past, let's say. Okay, now that means what else do I want to say? And the idols on Easter Island, Alexander. Positions and approve. And the megaliths. Sergei Ivanovich, no. Esotericists have specific stones, pieces of iron, to which they refer. Please explain how the idols appeared on Easter Island. Here we are explaining, and here are these megaliths that are higher than a person. Let's not go into details. Okay, we won't. Yes, empty. But we refer. Who and what are we referring to? Well, I see. Well, they refer, yes, to the fact that science does not try to explain or cannot explain and cannot. Explain it in your own way. That's good. I will say more. Actually, I have loved fairy tales since childhood. And so am I. And I still love fairy tales.
Me.
All right. I treat esotericism as you know such a land of fairy tales. They tell me such beautiful fairy tales for me. I just melt from these fairy tales. And now children's fairy tales are no longer interesting to me. Well, the bun rolled, but there's some kind of, so to speak, a cunning fox dropped a fish there, but it's not interesting. Otherwise, adult fairy tales. Well, yes. These fairy tales are very interesting to me. I listen to them as fairy tales, but I treat them as fairy tales. Why? Because I understand that science requires an evidence base. There is none here. But what I disagree with categorically, with one point only in Alexander's statement, and now I will explain with what. Why? Because if I don't say it, then I will feel that I have not fulfilled a certain, so to speak, duty to my viewers. I disagree with this. Yes, there is a hierarchy of higher powers. Yes, there is this scheme like in the army. When a person has a teacher there, there are priests, there are super priests, there are saints, there are hermits, and so on. This hierarchy goes somewhere to infinity. But I categorically disagree with the statement that a person of any level cannot directly turn to God. Here I do not agree with this. I will explain why. The fact is that according to my theory, and according to all religious statements, Every person has a spark, a part of the soul, that belongs to God. And through his soul, through this little grain, he can feel directly, just as conscience is an indicator of the correctness of an action, an arrow that shows you are acting incorrectly or incorrectly. God is always present in us. We are its parts, we are its cells. And this contact is directly with this universal spiritual force. It is there for us. Of course, this does not mean that we should turn to the highest for every trifle. When I see in Christianity, let's say people come, they pray, someone prays, stands at the icon, let's say Seraphim of Sarov is there. Someone stands at Matryonushka, helps, someone goes directly to Jesus Christ, to the icon, to the Son of God. Someone in general to what then the relics are applied, for example, yes. Why? Well, because it's more convenient for a person to contact with some kind of lower incarnation of God at some specific level. Because he solves minor issues, he doesn't have to go up to God himself there, right? But I want to say that the path to God is open for every living being. And every living being, not only a person, but even a living cell, can directly, by passing all these hierarchical levels, receive an impulse of spiritual light and receive a hint from God himself, who is universal. Why can it? Gets it? Well, this is the main essence of esotericism, that even an atom receives energy from God. But then, when you talk about these here, you've been telling us about your Pupkin for a long time. Listen up, Vladimirovich rose to. No, he gets everything. Sergei Ivanovich, he gets everything, and anyone can apply. But the question is, he can. Her contradicts a boy from kindergarten to communicate with an academician in the language of an academician. No, the question is what? The question is different. So we communicate with God directly, although we can communicate, I say, with saints, with a priest, with some spiritual persons. Why? Because we are a part of God. We are a cell of God. Inside of us, yes. As a cell, we can calmly communicate with our universal spiritual. What do you call the word communicate? To communicate is to receive help, support, and information from God. And that, it certainly goes. The thing is, it's coming. Even if there is no contradiction, so I would not go into the subtleties of your thesis, so to speak, that we cannot communicate with them as help goes to everyone regardless, even if he does not pray, does not ask, but he still comes from above. Then I withdraw my objection. Because then your model is Vasya Pupkin, who climbed thereon. I got up during the parade to Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin and began to explain to him how to manage a platoon, your image. It really exists, and it's stupid to deny that we have a hierarchy, and in this hierarchy, everything is, so to speak, permeated with the will of the whole, and so on and so on. But I repeat once again, in addition to logical communication on specific questions, we have endless ones in our. Well, here's Sergei.
Which also belongs to.
No, I'm just going to finish now. In this, we have almost found, as it were, a compromise. I just outlined my position. This does not mean that the position is correct. As a replica. Yes, 2 words as a cue. So Vasya Pupkin, every person on earth, including Vasya Pupkin, and in addition to the fact that there are generals, colonels, officers there, every Vasya Pupkin has a guardian angel. So this is the guardian angel who connects him directly with God. He has this one directly, and the mechanism is as follows. He can pray to God, but he will get to the guardian angel. In other words, it's all arranged energetically, so that it doesn't matter who he prays to. He, if he associates with something high, sublime, and calls it God, Allah, the Absolute, anyone. But he immediately gets in touch with the guardian angel, and the guardian angel does everything that is most favorable for this, with Vasya Pupkin. In other words, a reaction from the divine world necessarily exists. Well, I'm the only question that we have clarified a little bit. It's just that I don't have the opportunity to tell you in more detail. No, I have to say that the task that we set in this conversation, it was very specific and very narrow. And it was, as it were, partially completed. That is, but in the end, after all, I split you and you told me what awaits humanity in a very long time. They will lead other human beings. Will they create new planetary systems? Yes. I can tell. And at a higher level, entire galaxies will be created, but it's already there much, much higher is the level. I see. In other words, is the task clear? In other words, we are currently undergoing training here, creating this material world here, in order to learn how to lead yourself later, then go, so to speak, to create another one.
Well, it's unclear.
And the same thing happens to all of us at school. Yes. So I just want to say that I am grateful to Alexander. Why? Because I think that hardly any of the esotericists would have given us such a detailed, balanced, I would say carefully, and
It makes sense.
logically, yes. I would tell you about the esoteric, so to speak, vision of the future and the past and the present. It's me taking off my hat, yes, because from my point of view, Alexander is for me personally the best specialist I know in the field of esotericism. Perhaps I know few esotericists. Someone will say, no, I'm better than Alexander. Well, let there be someone who knows better. There is a conversation with someone who knows someone. It's always very, very subjective. For one is the best, for another. I am quite satisfied with your answer. Now I give the floor to Our Lady. She will ask her questions. Then Alexander Viktorovich will surely make a big speech on this topic. Masha, do you think that's how you, after listening to this, have you discovered a new understanding of esotericism?
Yes, it's very interesting from everything and complicated. Well, by the way, it's really difficult to state everything so quickly on such a deep topic. So many books have been reread, and all this is added up. In general, yes, it's interesting. I saw the scheme that Alexander laid out, these here. Well, I call them eggs roughly, but that's exactly where the world is compacted and then compacted. Well, in the diagram, this is from the fact that we are, well, first compacted, then, well, this, by the way, also turns out. That is, having gained experience in a condensed form, we then condense once, then incarnate again. That's how I understood it. I think it is.
And so it is.
Here's my question. What kind of tools do I have for Alexander to get into this subtle world? Because, well, in the church, in the institute of the church, these are commandments, these are prayers, this is teaching. Esotericism is something, as I understand it, very new. There are not even tools here. Here's how to get in. Is it the subconscious or is it?
No, there are tools. So the tools are ethics. It's not some kind of breathing practices there, meditations, yes, stealing with your hands back and forth. It's all physical. I understand. As it is.
What you say?
The main tool is ethics. Moreover, this ethics does not require being somewhere in an ashram, in a church, in a monastery, in a cave in some kind. Here we are living in our real life, raising children, going to work, studying at an educational institution, and communicating with people. So the main tool is the right human relationships. If we ethically correctly implement them in our lives, then we rise to a higher evolutionary level. And then at some point we will be noticed by higher forces. That's how we, as good students at school, are noticed, excellent students, and help them prepare for the institute. Or when good students are noticed by professors, and they are preparing them for graduate school. Because, well, this guy stands out, we need to deal with him. In the same way, if we live in life correctly, do not react with anger, do not react aggressively. Do not row everything under ourselves. Do not climb over the head of another in a career. If we live ethically correctly, then we are improving evolutionarily and become noticeable to higher teachers. And then they give us more advanced knowledge, which is optional for everyone. But simpler knowledge of how to live properly, they are given in ethical teachings. That's what I was just telling. It's like it's a theory, right? And there is practice as an application to theory. In esotericism, there is an application in the form of practical exercises. Here they are called ethical teachings. How to build relationships with people correctly. This is about what all sorts of Dale Carnegies teach us, all sorts of psychologists there. Freudians there are trying to cast a shadow on the weave. Everything is allegedly implicated in sexuality. In short, psychologists are trying to do something in this area. But here is what the ethical teaching given in the 20th century gives. But, unfortunately, there is a lot of tinsel there. To distinguish which of them is an advanced ethical teaching from some nonsense that Tietkin received and says, I received received from the Mahatmas. Here, let's follow these teachings. Well, it's hard to figure it out, but there is such a law. Every person, what he is attracted to, it is very useful for him to pass. If a person is attracted to some sect, this is the greatest evil for Orthodox priests. This means that he got in instead of us, where we will teach him everything correctly. He got into some very dangerous sect, and there his brains are going to turn to shit, and how would he degrade, get to the Satanists? In fact, if a person is attracted to something, it's like a magnet. Here he is, every person is a magnet, and it is important that this magnet is attractive to where it is supposed to be attractive. And the measure is his interest. If he is interested in someone, and he have no repulsion from this collective where he was drawn, then it is very useful to be attracted there, even if it is some kind of sect and not very good, because he has to fill these bumps. This should be the experience that he must definitely get in order not to get into an even more unpleasant situation later, when the price will be much higher.
Yeah, therefore,
Yes.
we talk about it as a tool. Well, you can call it morality in another way.
Morality, ethics, ethical teachings.
Here, but what about the case when we consider these pebbles brown, green, blue, and any blue steel can easily become very brown?
It's easy to go abroad.
Of course, this is morality. If the environment, well, the conditions are so hungry, cold, we immediately fall back.
The answer is, a weak person will fall even lower. A strong one will strengthen his muscles. It's like when a person got to the paratroopers in the army, but if a person is not physically developed, he will immediately fall to the ground there after the first cross, or maybe he will get to the hospital there at all, because he cannot cope with these loads. And a strong man, his paratroopers will train him, he will pull himself up more, and he will start running crosses. Those who could not will get stronger physically. Spiritually, it's the same. Some conditions that simply plunge another into the abyss, and a strong person in these conditions pumps up spiritual power. He overcomes them correctly, strengthens his power as an evolutionarily advanced being, and he will be able to cope with a negative environment, with a very difficult one, even in the most unfavorable conditions. I will add yes, in favor of your version. The following is that the history of the famine years in the 30s in Ukraine, and the history, so to speak, of the famine years in St. Petersburg during the blockade, showed that some people began to engage in cannibalism. Some, so to speak, ate people there, and some, most didn't eat. So those people who ate people, and those who did not eat, these are just those who are weak, they ate, and those who are strong. They preferred to even starve to death, but not to engage.
Moral?
Yes, that is. And so,
Very.
different preparedness. This is a fact. This is a historical fact that is documented. It can be traced. I can say that I have relatives on my father's side. They almost all died out of hunger in the 30s. The answer is clear, Masha. Yes, Masha.
I would like to add a little bit for the younger generation. On behalf of the younger generation, that is, based on all of the above, I draw conclusions such that the esoteric tool is ethics, morality, and this is the right way. Because many people can get confused, and there are a lot of them now.
This is all the wrong way.
That's what I wanted. Yes.
For the body, it can be useful for the body.
Yes, someone gets into the material world in a different way. It's very. The path is the way through the back entrance.
This is a very, very dangerous path, firm or you cannot get out of the swamp at all. The theatrical world is that swamp, firm which a right-going person most likely will not get out for the rest of his life.
Because there are no daughters of support there.
There are no supports at all. There's a solid illusion of the mists of asthma. There are some areas that are falsely bright, but they are all false too. Well, that is, there may be some there who can portray themselves as so advanced, so almost light. But this is all a world of illusion.
That's right. That's what it was important to clarify.
If a person, with the help of yoga, meditation on the centers, breathing exercises, Tao, Qigong, and other things, develops an exit to the astral world for you, then he will not be interesting for Mahat, for a lot of lives. They won't help him for sure. Maybe they will help to get out, But if he is proud of his achievements there, they are a lost person for him for several incarnations. And for the Black Lodge, he just becomes our man. They will pass through him a lot of all sorts of unpleasant things to the people around them through such a person.
Here, yes. Here, I just wanted such a remarachka.
It's important, it's important. Now a lot of people fall into just these circles, sects, practices, and say, and why does he give me esotericism? I need practice. They tell him, so you ethically live in the life that seems to be opening up to you. Home, work, family. Now, if you live with dignity in these conditions, here you will have the fastest path that can only be.
But how to fill the cones? Someone is still attracted to these divinations.
And fate will send you towards. Every person has dark pieces of dark magnetism and light in the magnet. Here, light magnetism will attract light teachers to you who will help you move up, and those imperfections. They are such pieces of dark magnetism, and temptations will be attracted to them, but feasible for you. And this is what you will inevitably fall on them. You will inevitably step on the rake 2 or 3 times, fill the cones, and realize, no, this is the light one that I got, so I'll go after him, but this one that seemed light to me. But turned out to be just bumps on the way, so I filled the cones. I'm a circle of psychics along this path. I've been going to psychics for several months, but they just threw me out of there for a syringe. Everyone stayed there. They started to erase their own with their hands. What color am I sending? Red, correct. And here they are, as it were, beginning to praise a person, saying, oh, you have developed the rudiments of historians. Come to us. All this, of course, for a lot of money. And these schools that teach these lower psychism for money, they are now flourishing in the West, especially those who know how to earn money. We don't really know how to earn money, but they are successfully learning to earn money with the help of just those courses and practices, trainings that are now widely spread in our society. This is a false path. This is the wrong way. Here I support the churchmen when they say that this is Satanism, a little bit like a primitive term. But any more questions?
No, I have everything, thanks. It's very detailed. To me, everything is clear.
And what is your impression of the performance?
A very positive impression. Yes, for me, esotericism has opened up from a new side. I actually imagined, of course, some kind of astral and some tools and practices that help me navigate there properly, in fact.
No, only confused in the head. Everything turns upside down there.
Well, this is the first thing that is just visible, noticeable as.
Well, the bumps need to be filled. If in past lives there was an attempt to do this, a person will unfortunately get there. He has to. Do you know how a person is treated from that wrong path?
How?
You know, suffering.
Suffering, well.
Suffering, illness, suffering, life's troubles, divorces from husbands, children are morons, freaks who are born in your family. That is, there are a lot of all sorts of options when we suffer. Death. Sergei Ivanovich told me that a psychic had a son in a disaster, another psychic, about whom Budanov said, also gets cancer there, and so on, and so on. A lot of suffering. That is, a person is pulled out with the help of suffering. They are trying to pull him out of this path incorrectly. But he's very proud. One person sees nothing in the subtle world, but he sees everything. He is the navel of the earth. He is advanced. He is a messenger from heaven. But in fact, this is a very big trap and a very dangerous path. Well, I think Masha is quite satisfied, so to speak, with our meeting. Now we will listen to Alexander Viktorovich, as a man whom I consider to be the leading philosopher of Russian culture. Oh, I like his concept of a tree so much. That is, it's very cool. Well, there's a tree, it's just an image, actually there. No, he is very broad and deep, this image. Yes. On it, he managed to expound all the esotericism. True, it's like without, maybe without a direct connection with the Mahatmas, but through intuition, he received the most important ones. I really like it. Well, Alexandrovich, after such words, it will be difficult for you to criticize. Since I've been praised, what else can I do? How does this rooster praise the cuckoo, right? Well, no, you can't really get me and praise me. Thank God. Thanks anyway. So, first of all, Alexander, I really liked your lecture, speech. There are really a lot of interesting new things. It's a system of knowledge, ideas about the world. It is always very valuable to me. In general, it is extremely valuable. When a person has a holistic view of the universe in his head, to give an assessment is not today's agenda. It is better not to rush with the assessments. Yes, so I really liked it. And thanks to Sergei Ivanovich, he practically said everything I wanted. I actually have nothing special to add here. I'm just saying one line. Well, that is, I wanted to ask a question, and Sergei Ivanovich has already said everything. Well, you've already answered everything, Alexander. Therefore, I will not waste time, so to speak, on repetition. That's the only thing that's very important, what you said from the point of view of esotericism as a professional, a person who knows a lot about immersion in the occult, these sorts of things. It's very dangerous. I absolutely agree. I'm even taking this opportunity now because people will be watching us. Listen to what Alexander Cook says. He's telling the truth. Don't get in there. Great teachers compare it as if a child is taken to a laboratory with electrical appliances.
In which?
A lot of these same. Or to the ammunition depot. If a child comes and starts playing with this weapon, there will be a lot of trouble. The Russian saying is not knowing the ford, and no one knows the ford. The most important thing is to live ethically with dignity, to be a decent person. This is the most important practice. Alexander Viktorovich, we are listening to you further. So there's something else about these sorts of things. If he's just starting to take money. Yes. That's all. If a person has some abilities, and he really can and wants to do something, he will never charge you for it. He will do everything. And you won't even know anything about it very often. I mean, what do I want to say? What? This is a very high level. There are different people in the world who talk blood like this. Let's say science can't explain that they cure some serious diseases there. Maybe they help. They see that you go there. Don't go there. But they don't charge for it. Well, that's forbidden. Mahatmas forbid their teachers and their students to take money for the knowledge they share. Well, you see. And they forbid to impose them. In general, it is recommended only to answer questions, and if there is interest, then answer. Well, I took advantage of the allocated time here in our program to just make this appeal to the audience. In response to these interesting ones, it was very nice to hear, which was written by Alexander. Well, actually, that's all, Sergei Ivanovich. Thanks again. I am very. Your participation in our conversation. Yes, why? Because your harmonious vision of the world, I have it as if you know. I touch it when I feel that, yes, the world is harmonious. In other words, I don't just see it. I realize it, but I feel it. Therefore, thank you very much for your teaching. Thank you to Alexander. I'm wrapping up our meeting. I want to say that, first of all, I finally heard a clear, detailed picture of the future from the point of view of esotericism. I'm just going to repeat it now very concisely and very simplistically for the listeners, which means that I will listen to the end of our meeting. The meaning of the vision of the future is as follows. The Earth is a certain process of development into which the subtle worlds send certain souls who, incarnating on Earth, begin to undergo appropriate training here, develop, gain some experience in the practice of creating the material world. Then they, together with this material world, with the earth, become refined, become more developed souls. And in a new place of the cosmos, the universes create the same new system, in which they create the same new stories of the development of the material world. So, this is the picture that Alexander confirms by nodding his head. I'm into the most general simple things. In the most general terms, exactly so. So, of course, the question remains unclear, and we will discuss it somehow. Why create these crude material worlds? Why? Because if it's many esotericists, I know they consider these rough worlds as sandboxes in which children play. Children learn to sculpt some kind of cakes in these sandboxes in order to gain experience. Now, but then the question arises, why this material world? Is it only for the training of souls, or does it have an independent value for the Supreme? This is the first time I read why exactly from Laurenti. Here is the answer to this question I read from him. Yes, but we don't know, at least we haven't heard, and probably won't know the meaning of the development of the material world. There you go. I think we are. This explains why exactly to incarnate in the dense world. No, there is one for him. It is clear to the soul to incarnate, but why do we develop this dense world? That is, there are two answers. The first one is self-learning. Well, a children's sandbox. We live, guys, with you in a children's sandbox and our whole life, including as much as you're cooking food for 3 children, is going to the kitchen, or let's say there are outings in the forest. It's all a sandbox where your soul develops. All my diamond tools are a sandbox. All rockets, nuclear power plants, space flights, robots are also a sandbox. This is the point of view of the main esotericism. I want to say that as a scientist, I do not agree with this. I'll explain why in a nutshell. Because I think, on the one hand, we develop as subtle souls in this sandbox. On the other hand, we are a rough material world. We animate it, that is, there is a process of animating all forms of matter, including rough forms. So this is the task of studying. No. Here there is study. We study at the same time. And there is a separate task. This is the revival of the rough world. It's connected, Sergei Ivanovich. It is connected, but these are 2 different tasks. And so I just want to indicate my point of view for the listeners of my channel, that I do not believe that this is just a sandbox. I think it's a construction one. No, and this is actually not just a sandbox. A person learns to teach others by himself. Well, not only that. Without making the world a better place, he teaches. We will leave this topic out of brackets as some understatement in order to arouse interest in further meetings. And the first one. And the second thing I would like to point out is also a very important point. The fact is that all churches allow people not only to turn to God individually and develop, but all churches are a social system that allows people to carry out collective prayer. Yes, it's important. Collective spiritual ascent and simplifying, perhaps, a lot of esoteric things to the most primitive things. They create the opportunity to collectively animate, that is, a society that is a family that prays in church, let's say, or some kind of community that prays in church, or let's say they're when Muslims gather for the Hajj, or they're around their stone, or become all together.
Мусульмане собираются в хадж или там вокруг своего камня, или становятся все вместе.
This is not just individual development, it is the spiritual development of social organisms. And here, separately, a big topic. This is a very important topic. Esotericism is addressed to a specific one person, a separate soul, a separate consciousness, and in this respect, it works with an individual person. The goal? No, it's a mistake. This is a mistake. I want to. It's just that there are still very few of us right now, and the task is to replace religions and create social organisms that will meditate together as they are now in the temples of the goal. No, it's not a mistake. They pray. The fact is that hysteria is currently engaged. Temporarily, is this a temporary step? At present, I repeat once again, esotericism is not something that postulates, but it deals with an individual. At present, the Church is not only concerned with an individual, it is concerned with societies, collectives, civilizations, cultures, states. The biggest mistake of mystics is that they deal with themselves, and the planetary hierarchies wants to teach them to deal with groups. Here. And now the most important thing is this. Esotericism is ahead. There is a lot of work ahead to create huge other collective ones. The fact is that now they are all egocentric. Here, that is, individuals, and they should create large collectives. Yes, but this is the work ahead. I got it, great. So we are putting an end to this. Why? Because we have recorded that esotericism is working at the moment, but it has something ahead of it. The Church works with a person, and how it works can be seen from the results. We must look at the fruits of the Church. For example, I love the Orthodox Church very much. I go to church, I pray there, I get the illogical, the unconscious. I get help, support from turning to Jesus Christ, to God. I pray to certain saints, and there in the church, I receive tremendous spiritual support.
И там в церкви я получаю огромную духовную поддержку.
So I'm grateful
Вот, и,
for that.
Признателен за.
And I
И
know
я
that
знаю,
our
что наша
Orthodox
православная
Church,
церковь,
it
она
nourishes our
кормляет нашу
Russian, Slavic,
цивилизацию русскую,
Eurasian
славянскую,
civilization,
вот,
and allows us to preserve the
евразийскую,
soul of the
и
people at the
позволяет
present time.
нам сохранить душу народа в настоящее время.
The people, not
Народа,
even an
не
individual,
отдельного
but the people
человека
as a
даже,
whole.
а народа в целом.
And this is her
И в
great
этом ее
mission.
великая миссия.
But naturally,
Но,
of course,
естественно,
I
конечно,
wanted
я
to
хочу
say from the
сказать
very
с самого
beginning
начала, что
that public consciousness
сознание
is
общественное
arranged
устроено
in such a
таким образом,
way
что тут есть
that there is religion,
религия,
there is science,
тут есть
there is
наука,
philosophy,
тут есть
there is art,
философия,
and there
тут
is
есть искусство,
esotericism.
и тут есть эзотерика.
And it is still
И
a
до
big
сих пор
problem,
это
just
проблема
as there are
большая.
incessant
Так же, как
disputes,
между
discussions
различными
between different
цивилизациями,
civilizations,
различными
different
культурами,
cultures,
идет
wars
непрекращающийся
turning into
спор,
conflicts, mutual
дискуссии,
killings.
переходящие в
This is a
войны,
fact of our
конфликты,
time
взаимные
and the
убийства.
past.
Это
So there are
факт
still
нашего времени
incessant
и
conflicts
прошлого.
between
Так
religion
до сих
and
пор между
esoterica,
религией,
science,
эзотерикой,
philosophy,
наукой,
art,
философией,
sometimes
искусством идут
escalating wars and
непрекращающиеся
mutual
конфликты,
murders.
иногда перерастающие в войны и взаимные
I can
убийства.
remind you about the
могу
burning at the
напомнить о
stake of esoteric teachers,
сжигании, так сказать,
including the
кострах
fact that George Bruno was
эзотерических,
burned.
так сказать, учителей, в
That
том
in
числе,
response
о том,
to
что
this,
Джорджана Бруно
materialists
сожгли, о том,
destroyed
что
religion in
в
Russia
ответ
in
на
the
это
20th
материалисты
century.
разрушили в 20
Temples
веке
and priests were killed.
религию в России, храмы, убивали
In other
священников. То
words,
есть
the situation, frankly
ситуация,
speaking,
прямо
is
скажем,
not easy.
непростая.
There is not only no mutual
Взаимного
understanding,
понимания
there is
не
not
только
even a
нет,
desire
даже
for
желания
mutual
взаимного
understanding.
понимания нет.
Everyone,
Каждый
all of this will be
Все это будет
resolved.
решено.
Well, I
Ну
am
что,
deeply
я
satisfied with this
глубоко
conversation
удовлетворен этой беседой,
because I
потому что я
received
получил
almost no
ответы,
answers to the end, of course.
практически, не
Because
до
the
конца,
topic
конечно,
is
потому
very
что тема
deep
очень
to
глубокая,
the
на те
questions that I
вопросы,
left
которые
in
я
front of
ставил
me
перед
when I
собой,
invited
когда приглашал
Alexander.
Александра.
I understood how
Понял, как
esotericists
эзотерики
see the
видят
future of
будущее
man
человека
and
и
humanity.
человечества.
At least I
По
know
крайней
how
мере,
they
я
see
знаю,
it.
как они это видят.
I am not sure
Я
that my view of the
не
future
уверен, что
coincides,
мой
coincides
взгляд на
in some
будущее
ways,
совпадает,
does not
в
coincide
чем-то
in some
совпадает, в
ways.
чем-то не совпадает.
But
Но
our
наша
task
задача
here
здесь
is
не
not to
судить
judge our
своих
positions,
позиций, а
but to
услышать,
hear, so to speak,
так сказать,
the opinion of a
мнение
specialist.
специалиста.
Why?
Почему? Потому что
Because
следующая
our
наша
next
беседа
conversation is scheduled
запланирована
to meet
встреча
with a
с
representative who studies
представителем,
Islam, and we
который
will ask exactly the
изучает
same
ислам,
questions.
и
To a
мы точно такие
representative
же
of the
вопросы зададим
Islamic Church.
представителю исламской
As
церкви.
the
Как
Islamic
исламская
Church sees
церковь,
the
как
future of man and
видит
humanity.
будущее человека и человечества.
He agreed
Значит,
to
он
participate
согласился
in this,
поучаствовать в
a
этом,
major specialist
крупный
in this
специалист в
field.
этой области.
Then we plan
Вот
to
потом
invite
мы
another
планируем
specialist in the
пригласить
field
еще
of
одного специалиста
Christianity
в области
to ask
христианства,
questions in
чтобы
his person, of
задать
course.
вопросы
To the Christian
в его
Church,
лице, конечно,
how
христианской
Christianity
церкви,
sees
как
the future of
христианство видит
humanity
будущее
and man.
человечества и
Why is
человека.
this important?
А почему это важно?
Because how
Потому
we
что
see
от
the
того, как мы
future
видим
also
будущее, зависит
depends
и то,
on
как
how
мы
we
сейчас
choose which
выбираем
roads
какие дороги.
now. The last example. That is,
Последний
if we
пример.
see a
То есть, если мы
technocratic
видим
future,
будущее
then we do not need
технократическое, то нам
spiritual
духовное
development.
развитие не
Religious
нужно,
people are
религиозное
not
не
needed.
нужны, эзотерики не нужны,
Esotericism
нам
is
нужны
not
только
needed.
роботы,
We only need robots,
трансгуманизм,
transhumanism,
материализм, так сказать, и так далее,
materialism,
и так далее.
and so on and so on.
Если мы видим
If
мир,
we see
как
the
видят
world as
некоторые
some fanatical religious
фанатичные
fanatics see it,
религиозные
then they say,
фанатики, то они говорят,
technological processes are crutches.
технологический процесс
Time
это
management is an
костыли,
ugly path
временное
that humanity
явление,
has
это
slipped into
уродливый
completely
путь,
by
на который
accident,
человечество
at the will of
сползло
evil
совершенно
forces.
случайно по воле
Therefore,
злых
it
сил.
is necessary
Поэтому
to
надо
discard
отбросить
the
всю
entire
технологическую
technological
линию
line of
развития
development
всех
of
этих
all these
роботов, забыть
robots,
об этом как о
forget
страшном
about
сне,
it as a
начать
terrible
развиваться
dream,
духовно.
and begin to
Вот
develop
такие мнения
spiritually.
сплошь и
Here are
рядом,
such
сплошь и
opinions
рядом
all the
можно
time.
встретить
All the
в
time you can meet in
разных
different camps.
лагерях.
And that's why
И
we are
мы
conducting such
для
a
того
roll
и,
call, in
собственно говоря,
fact,
проводим
in order
такую
to hear the
перекличку,
opinion
чтобы
of
услышать
not fanatics,
мнение
but the
не
opinion of thinking,
фанатиков, а
competent
мнение
specialists in this
думающих,
field.
грамотных специалистов в этой
Why?
области.
Because
Почему?
I
Потому что
assume that the
я
future will be
предполагаю,
through a
что
narrow
будущее
neck.
будет
When it passes,
через
it will
узкое
become
горлышко,
like a
когда
tree
пройдет,
so
оно
diverse,
станет как
and
древо
everything
такое,
will be there. There will
разноплановое.
be
И там будет
these,
все.
and there will be
Там будут
robots, and there will be esoteric, maybe some, so to say, ways of development, and everything. It will be.
I have this.
Exactly.
It helps to be, for example, me. I'm with him.
This is the simplest thing that we see in the future, is robots without them.
And to involve the family while he cleans the floor. I can devote time to the family. You know, not me.
And this is very
Это очень
important.
важно.
Yes.
And I'm messing around in the corners.
What kind of robots? Let's vote. Look at how many people there are for people. It is important for a thinker to be freed from slave labor when he thinks that, and spiritually ascend. Well, thank you very much. All the best. Goodbye.